Hi everyone. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about how to write linear equations based on graphs. It's almost the opposite of what we were doing in the last video where we were graphing based on an equation. Instead, I'm going to give you a graph and you're going to write the equation for the graph. So let me just start with an example. Let's see. So all right, and I know these aren't the easiest to see, but what I like to do on here is figure out what my slope is and figure out what my y-intercept is. So it's easiest for me to figure out what my y-intercept is first, just because I can see it on the graph really easy. My y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, and it looks like this one crosses the y-axis at 2, so I know my b is 2. And this, once again, this is based on my slope-intercept form. So my slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where b is my y-intercept, and then m is my slope. Okay, so now that I know my y-intercept, my goal is to find the slope, and the easiest way to find the slope is to pick 2 points or find 2 points on the line that where it crosses exactly. It doesn't necessarily have to be the intercepts. It just has to be somewhere where it crosses the grid marks, where you can definitely tell, oh, that crosses at that point. So I picked 2 points on this line, and now I'm going to find the slope between these 2 points. It looks like from the rightmost point, which is at negative 2, 0, I have to go up twice. So I rose twice. I'm going to put a 2 right there for my rise, and then run 1, 2. So my run is also 2, which means my slope simplifies to be 1. Okay, with this information, I can actually write my slope-intercept form, because all I need is my slope and my y-intercept. So I can say y equals my slope, which is 1, x, plus my y-intercept, which is 2. This is my slope-intercept form of the line. Okay, great. But I'm not going to make it that easy on you, right? What I also want you to do, or what we're also going to talk about, is how to find the standard form of that line. Now, there's no real easy way to look at a graph and just find the standard form. So what we're going to do is actually just convert this equation to its standard form. And the easiest way to do that is to get the x and the y on the same side. So I'm going to just rewrite the slope-intercept form down here. And now we're going to get the x and the y on the same side by moving the x over, by subtracting it. All right, so now I have negative 1x plus y equals 2. And if you remember, in standard form, we really don't like when it's negative in front. That first chunk has to be positive. So to get rid of the negative, what I'm going to do is multiply everything by negative 1. All right, and then those negatives cancel each other out, and I'm just left with x. I could write 1x, but I can also just write x. And then y times negative 1 is a negative y. And then 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, which means my standard form is x minus y equals negative 2. So both of these that I just boxed are answers. The top one is in slope-intercept form, and then the bottom one is in standard form. Okay, let's go through another example. Let's see. Okay, so just based on how I have to draw these graphs, I'm already picking 2 points to look at. If the graph has already been drawn for you without those points, you have to find those points, like where it crosses the grid line exactly. We're going to do this the same way as we did the last one. We're going to find the y-intercept, and then we're going to find the slope. Now the y-intercept is really easy to find. It's where it crosses the y-axis. It crosses the y-axis at 0, which means my y-intercept is 0. Now your slope, you have to pick 2 points, which I've already done for you. And we've got to find the rise and run. If you notice, this graph is going downhill if we're looking at it from left to right. which means that it's going to be a negative slope. So from the leftmost point, it looks like I have to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then so that means my rise is -4 because I had to go down 4, and then my run is 1, 2, 3. So my slope is -4/3. Okay, with this information, we can write the slope-intercept form y equals mx plus b. So it'll be y equals -4/3 because that's my m, x plus 0. We don't have to add that 0 in there. We could literally just write y equals -4/3 x. That is my slope-intercept form. Okay, now let's convert that to standard form. And the way that we're going to do that is first to get the x and the y on the same side by adding the 4/3x to both sides. Okay, so now I have 4/3x plus y equals, there was nothing left over on this right side, so we can just put a 0 there. Okay, standard form really doesn't like fractions, so we need to get rid of the fraction. The way that we do that is by multiplying everything by its denominator. So we're going to multiply everything by 3. And the 3's on the x's cancel out, which gives me just a 4x, and then 3 times y gives me 3y, and 0 times 3 still gives me 0, and there's your standard form. So 4x plus 3y equals 0. There we have it. Okay, let's go through a couple more examples. This next one is a little bit of a special case. So here's our graph. And this graph is just a straight horizontal line at -1. So we have, when it's a straight horizontal line, we've kind of talked about this in a previous video, but that it automatically means that our slope is 0. And when our slope is 0 and we use that y equals mx plus our, well, let me backtrack. Let's find our y-intercept as well. So our b is where it crosses the y-axis, and the y-axis, where it crosses the y-axis in this case is -1. Okay, so now we can use that information to find the slope-intercept form. So y equals the slope is 0, x minus 1. Now, if you remember, 0 times anything is just 0, which means that I'm going to end up with just y equals -1. And that's why it's a special case. There's no x involved in there. It's just y equals -1. It's also another, I also consider it a special case because in this case, the standard form and the slope-intercept form are the same. So this is the slope-intercept form. It's also the standard form. The other special case that you might run into is when it's a straight vertical line. When it's a straight vertical line, so let's say that you had something like this, instead of being y equals, in that case, it would just be x equals wherever it crosses the x-axis. So like in this case, it'd be x equals 1. So just remember those two special cases if you can. Okay, last example. Let's see, so we've got, all right, so once again, we're going to find our y-intercept and our slope. Our y-intercept, it looks like in this case is -1, it's where it crosses the y-axis. And then our slope, we do the rise over run. It looks like from the leftmost point we go up 1 and then over 2. So our slope would have to be 1 over 2. All right. Now we can write our slope-intercept form, which would be y equals 1/2 x minus 1. Well, that was easy. Okay, now we just have to convert that to standard form. And let me rewrite it really fast. To do that, the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the x, move the x to the left side by subtracting it over to the other side. So I get negative 1/2 x plus y equals negative 1. All right. Once again, we really, in standard form really likes rules. So we want to get rid of that fraction. We also want to get rid of the negative in the front. The way that we're going to do that is by multiplying everything by -2. We multiply by a negative to get rid of the negative in the front. We multiply by the 2 to get rid of the 2 on the bottom of the fraction. All right. And so when we multiply the negative 1/2 by -2, we should just end up with 1x. We can write it as just x though, because 1 times anything is itself. Then we've got -2 times y, which gives me a -2y. And then -1 times -2 gives me 2, which means my standard form is x minus 2y equals 2. And there we have it, the slope-intercept and standard form of another example.